SMES and Substations have new and improved UI and some extra functionality. When you click on an SMES or Substation, you'll be granted with this UI that'll explain how many wattage kilowatt hours there are, or just watt hours, the charge circuit within and discharge circuit going out, and there's also these grayed out lines that will fill in to indicate what the SMES is doing. For example, I just removed half the battery storage from the storage cell so we can see some of the lights will turn off automatically and the energy will calculate properly. If I allow power to start charging the circuit, we can see the lines turn on. So we have external power coming in, goes into the charge circuit. So right now it's set to 5 kilowatts. However, there is more charge that can actually be attained here, so I can actually increase the number, and we can naturally see that number increase to start filling the storage cells. Then also, if we turn on output, it will continue to pass the power down the HV cable network, which in this situation is only wired up to a substation, which does not have an in. So if I turn on the in on the substation, we'll now see that the SMES is directly charging the substation. However, there is nothing going out because the substation does not allow for anything to go out. So if I were to turn on output, we'll see now that it is actually discharging through the circuit. I could turn it off to show that it's no longer charging the APC. So, and we just watched APC drain. So you really just use these white lines to indicate of how this is all working. So the substation is passing through the output of the SMES, and we're not taking from the internal storage because the substation is still actually charging from the SMES. We can also technically increase how much the substation is getting charged. So now the substation is charging and passing through the power, we can see with this white line here. So we're not using any of the power from inside the substation. We are just passing through from the generator to the SMES to the substation to the APC, and everything is being charged because we have a surplus of power. Knuckle Dusters have been added to the game. From the lowest damage Knuckle Dusters, which are brass Knuckle Dusters. These can be crafted with just some brass in your inventory, 6 brass. Then there is the Quartermaster's Golden Knuckle Dusters. These do more damage in brass knuckles, 14 damage a blunt a hit, and they attack 1.5 times a second. So the brass only does 12 damage a hit. QM's does 14. This is also a Syndicate objective. And then finally, we have the Syndicate Knuckle Dusters. These do piercing and blunt, so they have better damage mix-ups, more bleeding damage, and they hit harder than all 3. These cost 6 telecrystals. And like any fist weapon, you equip them on your glove slot, not in your hand. They're not weapons, they are gloves. The Bulldog bundle now comes with slugs in it. There is one drum of slugs, the one with the S. Slugs have been changed to do a lot more damage per shot. It is a solid 40 piercing damage per hit, and they all do structural now. Buckshot also does structural damage. Let me pop out a shell. So these are changed in the fact that they do structural damage. You can do some pretty decent damage to structures now with this. So let me just shoot something like an airlock. This is normal buckshot. If you manage to have a ton of shells on you, or you're trying to breach through just a normal window, like a reinforced window would fall like nothing. There is extra utility to these weapons now and ammo types. Speaking of ammo, there are now in-hand sprites for pretty much every magazine and speed loader. This again just adds more flavor to the world, especially if somebody's at a side profile. It becomes very obvious that they're holding something, so you don't always have to be shift clicking people to see that they're reloading their guns. You can actually just physically see them do it with the extra sprite work here. Very cool to see. Thieving gloves purchased by the Syndicate are now Chameleon as well as Thieves, so there's no more easy metagaming that Syndicate purchased the gloves over a Thief because they're all Chameleon now. Interdyne cigarettes, otherwise known as Syndicate cigarettes, are now a very cheap 1 telecrystal each, and you still get all 10 Omnizine cigarettes in the pack. There have been even more changes to the mailing system. There are now fragile packages. You must deliver it intact for a bonus. If you end up dropping this or breaking it, it looks badly damaged, and you'll lose a lot of the value. There are now priority packages. These will give you a bonus if you deliver it within a set amount of time. Packages and mail, also in general, now has different multipliers. For example, this one is worth 1240 pesos, this one is worth 1100. So there's not always just a set amount of money per package, it is a bit random. Clowns, mimes, and musicians can now actually use their service request computer to order goods. Ordering goods, though, has been changed. No longer can you just automatically approve your own goods anymore. You'll instead print out an acquisition slip. A slip with order details on it. It can be given to a cargo to complete the order. On it, it will give you the name of the person who has ordered it, exactly what you ordered, and even a description of it. So there's this barcode looking thing. So this still means now that cargo is really still in charge of all of the actual ordering, but people can put in their individual orders in a paper, like literal paper representation before bringing it to cargo. The cargo technician will then take this piece of paper if it's approved and then put it in the request computer, and you'll hear a little beep, a little scan, and then finally here you can approve it, and it will still have the request there by whoever ordered it. The selling and buying pallets found on the automated trade station are now indestructible, meaning that Nukies have no reason to go target this because ATS can actually be fixed, and you can't break the actual act of buying, but you can, I guess, slow down the act of selling, but either way, you can't completely cripple cargo and make them unable to sell anything ever again by destroying these pallets. Parcel Wrap can now be used to wrap objects, so you can wrap up something like a C4, put it in this nice little box, wonder what's inside, open it up, and bam, somebody just sent you a wrapped up C4. And what's been broken basically forever has been fixed. Spaceos that have higher levels of denominations will actually have different sprites now rather than having the shift click on them to even get a vague idea of how much is in a stack. A new material has been added to the game. It is called Gibtonite, and as the name implies, it is explosive. There is no way to indicate what these ores look like without an advanced mineral scanner or a normal mineral scanner. If you try to mine one, it will give you some warning before it explodes. This isn't like an insta-kill or anything. You have a pretty fair warning, but once this thing is ready to explode, it's a devastating explosion. Mining Hardsuit has received some changes. There is overall much less piercing damage, less explosive damage, but there's more overall protection against things like Slash, so more useful against just the general PvE mobs, but significantly worse against guns or like things like Syndicate agents who typically do things like piercing and explosion damage. Space debris that naturally spawns will look much more like the salvage magnet space debris. The loot tables have changed to in general be better and more rewarding for salvagers themselves. Apparently landmines can spawn on them, but I didn't see any spawn in a few, so I don't expect there to be a crazy amount of landmines, but that is something that can happen. And also with this, the naturally spawning round start asteroids that can be mined are now gone, so you have to pull those in specifically at the magnet. Otherwise, though, you can just basically go out and get pre-spawned debris and then use the magnet for mining or some mix, however you feel like it. Either way, just some loot adjustments and changes for salvage. Kinetic modifications is Tier 2 Arsenal technology. Inside of this tech, you'll get 3 PKA Modkits. One is damage, range, and fire rate. These Modkits can be made out of Proto lathe for 15 steel, 5 gold, and 5 silver apiece, and of course, well, a hyper lathe will be cheaper. So salvage can technically acquire these themselves because they can get Proto lathes themselves. They just need science to actually research them. These turn PKAs into very, very strong weapons. A default PKA only shoots one shot every 2 seconds. It has a range of about 5.5 tiles roughly, does 25 blunt and 30 structural a shot, but even with 25 blunt and 30 structural, that's effectively only 12.5 DPS due to the low fire rate. So very simply to start, a PKA can have 2 modifications, but they can only be different modifications. So you can either give one a range and a damage and a fire rate and a range, etc. You cannot put 2 identical mods in. So just immediately I put in a range mod. So usually you could shoot about 5.5 tiles away from a target. So I'm 5 tiles away. No issue if I move to 6, just a little bit off. But with the range modifier, you can actually shoot nearly to the edge of your screen, not quite. But not only does the extra range of the PKA's range extender make it shoot further, it also increases the velocity because technically it doesn't actually increase the range. The projectile despawns at the same time, but the velocity is faster, so it travels more distance before it despawns. Anyways, effectively, it means you'll hit your shots a little bit easier and you have further range tile. The fire rate modifier, when put in a PKA, will change the fire rate from 0.5 to 0.8. I might just have to shoot it for it to update. Let me see. And there we go. Yeah, 0.8. So this effectively will actually give you an extra 7.5 DPS on your PKA because it almost doubles the fire rate, not quite. Compared to just the raw damage upgrade, this is actually an increase of DPS. The damage modifier, when installed in a PKA, you can't actually see it, will give the PKA 10 more blunt and 15 more structural damage per shot. So you go from 25 blunt to 35 blunt a shot, and 30 structural to 45 structural a shot. So a PKA with just the damage is a 17.5 DPS, which is worse than the 20 DPS of PKA with a fire rate upgrade. But if you get both, the PKA actually goes up to a whopping 28 DPS. Yeah, you can only have the 5 tile range, but this is far extending actual melee range, and you can shoot surprisingly fast. The CMO's hard suit now has a proper 60% infection reduction, so the CMO is now significantly more resistant to being zombified, at least through the infection itself. They are still very susceptible to dying to bite damage with this thing. Moths now have displacement maps for their sprites, just like Vox do. It's not quite as noticeable as the Vox, just because they don't have like the forward-facing like neck posture, the forward-facing posture in general. But in general, moths now have a slightly more unique look with different clothings and armor. Cotton buns have been added, and that means you could technically make custom meals for moths that can actually fit on the bun. You can't just like cram like a meat patty on it or something and expect to be able to eat it. The Sheepmeister can now properly print out cloth for 2 balls of cotton for 1 cloth. This is significantly faster done through this than by hand, and you get twice as much cloth in the end. The ChemMaster now has 15, 20, and 30 unit increments for its buttons, just in a very smooth and even line. This can make doing specific mixes require less clicks, less carpal tunnel the better. The detective can now find Noir Tech glasses in their closet. These glasses make every single thing black and white, so you could truly immerse yourself into an actual noir film. Ox can now eat things like trash, so you can literally eat the bag of chips and then eat the literal bag of chips. And you can even do things like drink welding fuel directly from the tap with no problems at all. So very, very diverse digestive palate there. Plants will now actually tell you that they have a mutation on them. For example, it's woody and will need a sharp tool to harvest, and this plant seems nervous somehow. So if you actually harvest this one, it screams because it's nervous. The produce itself doesn't seem to have that on it, but the plant will have that mutation text. SSD players will now actually fall asleep after 10 minutes, very fitting for the name. The station records computer will now let you search for either job specific or species specific, so this can really help you crack down like who you saw, what you saw, profession that you saw, and what they did. Either way, just more ways of filtering for good information of who did what. Inap now processes slower and heals less asphyxiation per tick, but since it metabolizes a lot slower, this will keep somebody stable in a critical condition for much longer, so could be very vital when you're swamped in medical and just really need somebody to not suffocate to death while you're treating them for something else. Cable terminals now appear under the floor, and you can still see those under the floor easily with the T-Ray scanner, so they're more in line with the rest of the cables in the game. Vents can now have their pressure lockout released without a screwdriver by right-clicking it and then clicking release pressure lockout. Of course, this will not do much of anything in a spaced area because you would just end up venting the space or the air out, which I guess could actually be useful, but in this context, it's doing nothing but wasting air. There are new X-shaped junctions, which can accept input from 3 different directions and then output in one direction, so allows for even more crazy disposal loops. And screwdrivers can now be used to actually change what type of junction it is. So this lets you swap between the X, the normal Y junction, the T junction. Either way, very cool stuff, and I expect to see a lot more disposal hijinks very soon. Reflective vest and things like the energy katana now only work when it's actually actively equipped or in your hand. So for in the example of the vest, if it's equipped, it will reflect. Before, you could literally just hold it in your offhand as a perfect reflection shield. That is no longer the case. When you just press T to type, you'll now have an empty speech bubble above your head. As soon as you start typing, it'll go back to the normal speech pattern. It like aggressively resets, which honestly, I can't recall if it did that beforehand while you're typing. Either way, this can give a better indication to somebody that you're either just thinking of typing something, you are actively typing something, you name it. There are now Shark Minnow Tooth Spears and Carp Arrows. These Carp Arrows do 35 pierce a hit. The Shark Tooth Spear does 18 with one-handed melee, 25 damage when you throw it, and a whopping 22 pierce when wielded with 2 hands. Of course, these require killing space mobs, so you're pretty much going to have to rely on salvage or maybe like a dragon to turn them into arrows. Either way, you just craft these with the G construction menu. And, well, I guess you'd also have to be able to butcher these creatures to be able to do that as well. Either way, though, they're pretty big upgrades over their glass counterparts. Science can now research the push horn, which, dare I say, has an unfortunate sprite. Either way, when you use it by pressing Z, It will throw people back, but it no longer throws items back. That would have been absolutely chaotic. It has a pretty lengthy cooldown, so don't expect to be shoving people all over the place for free. Before, swords were all the same size, a 2x2. Now they all have different dynamic sizes in your inventory, and here's a quick little pop-up to indicate how these have changed. Overall, some of them have gotten technically a little smaller, some have gotten bigger, and it might be harder to fit them in your backpack, or easier, depending on if it's just like a 1x3 versus a 2x2. And last but not least, there has been a big push towards changing what tools different cyborgs get. There is thankfully, a very well and nice provided screenshot on the GitHub, so I don't have to dive through every single Borg. Most Borgs have gotten in additional stuff for their standard equipment. Each Borg has a tech upgrade that they can get. Well, pretty much all of them have a tech upgrade they can get. So like the Salvage Borg can get a Diamond Pickaxe, the NG Borg gets advanced tools, the Janny Borg gets advanced mop, the Med Borg gets just like more beakers. Either way, it's a good update for Cyborg players and more stuff to look forward to. I want to thank all of our maintainers and contributors for all their hard work, and of course, thank you for watching.